You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV. Hello friends, we are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. The views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Jordan Sather. First, check out Brainsupreme. Brainsupreme contains the highest quality ingredients to start your microdosing journey. Check out their website by using the link right in the description, and you're going to get 15% off your entire order. Visit that website using that link to learn more and start your microdosing journey today with Brainsupreme. Also, watch the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana. That's on Tubi, multiple streaming platforms. You can get a Rokfin premium membership at rokfin.com/FKN+. Always be sure to download our podcast episodes directly through Spreaker if you listen through any audio podcast player. Also, we're booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Jordan Sather. He is a citizen journalist, film producer, and entrepreneur. Jordan, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Today we're going to discuss the unfortunate state of the alternative media space, specifically the UFO conspiracy communities. I've been in this space for almost 9 years now. I've seen many researchers, whistleblowers, and contactees come and go, and there are plenty of amazing people with important and genuine insights and experiences to share. But it seems that grifters, con men, and even three-letter and military agents and assets have infiltrated this space to a disturbing degree. You've had firsthand experience with this by working directly with people like that. David Wilcock and Cory Good have become two of the most notorious grifters in the UFO community. I'm absolutely amazed that they still have any kind of following after everything that's come out. And you were recently featured in Darcy Weir's film about the Good Wilcock saga. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that, getting your insights into what really happened with that whole thing, as well as getting your insights into the phenomena itself and what has been unfolding lately with mass drone sightings across the United States and even in UK and other places from what I've heard. So lots to discuss today, but this is your first time on and we've only got an hour. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you involved with this work.
Yeah, the whole alternative media, social media sphere right now is basically a wild west. And with so many people moving away from the mainstream media propaganda, which is a good thing, they're going on to social media and to alternative media platforms for their news. And it's still a wild west out there. It's a whole new realm of propaganda that a lot of people have a tough time seeing through. But anyway, for my own personal story, I'll make this real quick. Sorry. Back in about 2011, 2012 is when I started waking up to the Matrix, I guess you could say. And it started with seeing the pharmaceutical industry, but I soon unraveled that thread. And of course, in some way, shape, or form, everything's connected. And I started digging into, well, the Federal Reserve and our banking system, because I saw the Rockefeller medical system. Who are these Rockefellers? Oh, they're also involved in setting up the banking systems. Oh, and there were also industrialist, oil baron banking families. So I started diving into the suppressed technology topic and everything about that. So back in about 2011, before we had a lot of these alt media, social media platforms, most of the conspiracy research was done on like forums and obscure blogs and stuff like that, right? And somehow I came across David Wilcock's work, his website, and at the time he just published his first book called The Source Field Investigations. And for some reason or another, I was just so new to all this research that I bought what David Wilcock was selling. And I was hooked on his blog and thinking he had all these insiders and, oh my gosh, these intel briefings and all this sort of stuff. So I thought, oh, this is the best information I can get right now. Well, I kept following him. And then it was about 2014, 2015 that David brought Cory Good onto the scene, one of his secret space program insiders, and he brought Cory Good out. So I was, believing that circus. And then come early 2017, it was January 2017, I had the inspiration to start a YouTube channel that I called Destroying the Illusion. And I was talking about three main things. One was my interest in health, exposing big pharma. One was my interest in politics, looking at it from a more neutral perspective. And then also, of course, the UFO, secret space program, suppressed technologies topic. So those are the three main things I was talking about. And my channel grew relatively quick, I guess. Within 3 to 4 months, I had 20,000 subscribers or so. But I guess I caught the attention of Cory Good and Cory Good's team because his business partner at the time reached out to me and invited me to come down to the Contact in the Desert conference in 2017. That was the last one they held at Joshua Tree when it was still held there. So I agreed to go, went to Contact in 2017, met Cory and his team, and then I kind of got swept up into that group and started working with them on a bunch of different projects, going to conferences and events with them. Ended up co-producing their Above Majestic documentary, which, for the record, I still think is a great piece of work, but if I could redo that, I would absolutely redo that and cut out, Cory Good and most, if not all, of David Wilcock's pieces in there. But so co-produced Above Majestic and ended up working with Cory and David and all of them, that group, for about 2 years through 2018 and 2019. But towards the end of 2019, I just saw a lot of stuff that maybe beforehand I was in denial about, or new, fresh things that really just started making me question that whole group, especially how Cory and David operated. Number one, I witnessed really weird, shady business dealings. I think they were shady. And just how they conducted their business behind the scenes, I did not think was fair at all. I saw a lot of little power plays go on, and we can get into that more if you want to, but I was not a fan of how they conducted their business behind the scenes. I thought how they operated was quite unfair. I also saw how they portrayed narratives to the public, and these were narratives that I saw behind the scenes that didn't match up with what they were telling their followers publicly. So, for instance, on the whole insider thing, at one point in 2018, I took a trip to go meet two of David Wilcock's supposed alliance insiders. And that whole situation just left a real bad taste in my mouth. These people they were not inside of anything except maybe David Wilcock's head. But then I saw David continuously promote these people as being alliance insiders in his articles and in his public work. So wasn't a fan of the whole insiders, I'm getting intel briefings thing. I just thought that was really sketchy. A lot of the business dealings I saw, I also was not a fan of. And also how, towards the end of 2019, early 2020, especially early 2020, the whole COVID, whatever you want to call it, hit. So a lot of internet influencers they couldn't go out, so they decided to start doing a bunch of live streams. And at this point, David started doing a bunch of live streams on his channel. And I remember one specific video, I think it's still up on his YouTube channel. He titled it "WikiLeaks Dumps All Files. Huge breaking news," or something like that. Number one, this was not WikiLeaks dumping all files. What David came across was a URL that was an index page of all of WikiLeaks dumps they've ever put out. It was nothing new. And this index file has been online for years. It only takes 2-3 minutes of research to figure out it was nothing new. So David did this whole 2-hour live stream based upon easily debunkable information, getting the headline wrong, and then proceeds to, in his YouTube video, sell his $333 video course that he just came out with. So, exorbitantly priced products that, in my opinion, were not worth the money, using false information, in my opinion, delusions of grandeur that David suffers from, but also Cory. I remember Cory came out with his new website in 2019, and he was calling himself the Enoch of our modern times on his website. And then using this legal defense fund to try to raise a bunch of money. And I saw his lawsuits, and his lawsuits, in my opinion, were total garbage. But he's putting out these GoFundMes so he can raise all this money for his legal defense fund. But none of it, I started to basically clear my eyes, and I'm like,
now,
I can't
at this
do this
point,
anymore.
who did he have lawsuits against? Because this became a major thing, basically suing everybody at some point. But at first, what were the earliest legal suits that he had?
Yeah, it's I'm gonna have to go back through my memory banks because there's been a lot of people that's been sued at this point. But oddly enough, who has sued Cory? I don't know if anybody has. But let's see. There was Cory's lawsuit against Cliff High that Cliff High won. And then Cory, I think he still has a lawsuit going against Gaia. And then Cory sued a bunch of his former business partners, 3 of them, Roger, Leon, and Adrian. Roger was the one that initially contacted me and got me into their group back in 2017. But there became business power plays, business disagreements or whatever. And Cory claimed that Leon, Adrian, and Roger were embezzling money from the documentary accounts and elsewhere. But what ended up happening is that Cory was the one that had the distribution company put all the movie royalties into his own account he created. And then he started claiming that Leon and Roger and Adrian were the ones embezzling the funds. But wait, why did you set up your own personal account to get all the money dumped into, Cory? And why have none of those royalties been paid out since you started that account, Cory? But Cory, you're over here claiming they're the ones embezzling funds. So I saw those lawsuits come out, and the narratives that were in those lawsuits, and then all of the disagreements about accounts and the way that he worked with the distribution company, which was 1091 Films, to set up this account to get all the money dumped into his own personal account away from everybody else. I'm like, this is just a mess. I can't deal with these egos anymore.
Ultimately, how did you separate yourself, and maybe just give us a brief recap of the series of events to follow? I don't want to spend the whole show on Good and Wilcock, but I think it is important that the audience understands, in case they run across any of these videos or feel compelled by any of the previous information they put out, they should know who these people really are. So just tell us a little bit about how everything unfolded after.
Yeah, no, that's a quick answer to this one. In 2019, Cory and David held a conference in Ventura, California called Dimensions of Disclosure. It might have been called, something to that effect. And I had went and spoken at that. And then after that, it's not like I was texting or calling Cory every single day or anything throughout the whole time period I was sort of working with him and his group, but just didn't hear from him for a while. I didn't reach out to him for a while. Then I started hearing from Roger, Leon, and Adrian, sort of what was going on with the lawsuits. And I don't know, at the beginning of 2020, I think I just got sick of their stuff, what I was seeing them put out. And then on my social media accounts, I put out this sort of PR statement where I said, I'm grateful for the time that I worked with him, but I just can't work with him anymore. So that's how I kind of severed those ties, is just putting out that statement. And yeah, really after that conference in Ventura, which was August 2019, I just didn't talk to them much anymore and got sick of what I was seeing, and put out that little social media statement. And that kind of burned my bridges with those guys. So yeah, ever since then, I haven't spoken much about it, like here and there in some videos that I do and whatnot. I've spoken about my experiences with them, but I got contacted by Darcy in 2022, a couple of years ago, and Darcy told me that he was working on this expose film of these guys, and I got to talking to Darcy, and I'm like, yeah, Darcy's pretty legit, you know. It's refreshing working with somebody who has integrity and is honest and pays what he's said he's going to pay and does it on time and all that. So I don't know. Darcy was a cool guy, and he shared with me some of the research he got for these films. I'm like, wow, you know more about Cory and David than I do, and I worked with them for a couple of years. So Darcy did great research for these films, and he asked me to sit down and appear in them, and said, totally, I'll share my story, no problem. So I did, and then a couple of months back, the Dark Alliance film finally released, and the first 2 episodes are on Amazon for a whopping 99 cents. So hell of a lot better price than a $333 video course.
Yeah.
And yeah, episode number 1 sort of dives into Jay Widener's story working with these guys and Gaia, which Gaia is a whole different conversation about them. But episode 1 dives into sort of how David and Cory came up, how they started working with Gaia, Jay Widener's experiences with working with them. And then episode number 2, Leon is in that one. So Leon decided to sit down and give his side of the story. And then I'm also in episode number 2 as well. So no, yeah, I was impressed with Darcy's work. I'm more than happy to work with him. And now the films are out, and here I am, you know, sharing these stories on a bunch of podcasts and stuff, which is cathartic. Nice and cathartic.
Yeah, man, I dig that. We live in an era, like we've been discussing, where there seems to be a lot of infiltration and misinformation surrounding specifically UFOs, but almost everything in our mainstream reality to certain degrees, and it seems to be all connected, like you said earlier, to a certain degree. But when it comes to UFOs, honestly, there's always been deception since the onset of this phenomena, at least understanding it as something extraterrestrial, non-human, visitors from other planets. There's always been this level of deception and infiltration and trying to steer the collective understanding of what is really happening. There's always been heavy military infiltration and involvement, and it's always been difficult to get a true understanding, especially if you're dealing with any institution or government agency. I've always thought the best way to understand this phenomena is through genuine experiences, people who have had the encounters, people who are honest about them and genuinely believe the experiences. For me, that's my favorite way to explore the phenomena, although I do pay attention to all the mainstream information that comes out, just so I have a bigger picture of everything. But what we're seeing right now is super interesting. The revival really started in 2017 with the Tic Tac incident, and it's kind of grown from there, waning in interest, and then we'd have a sighting or a congressional hearing, and then the excitement would start up again. But for the past few weeks, this is the most interesting activity that I've ever seen, and puzzlement by the entire world, really, from what has been unfolding. And the theories have been everything from military black projects, foreign governments, adversaries, to advanced drones of some sort, to alien or extraterrestrials. So, very fascinating series of events that have been unfolding. Let's start with your understanding of the phenomena in general and where you started with it and maybe where your understanding is now.
So basically, what I think is going on, I'll get to my theories on the drones and what's been going on the past few weeks, whether you want to call them drones or UFOs, UAPs, whatever, stuff in the sky. I want to touch on the last 7 years. You mentioned the interest started again primarily because of the 2 New York Times articles that came out in December 2017. Although I highly question the agenda at play here, because when I see the mainstream media and the government sort of collude to bring out these narratives and, oh, it's cool to talk about now. Well, why? Why did you get greenlit to come out with this secret UFO program and these black and white TikTok videos and whatever the case? What's the real agenda here, right? Because, like you said, for decades, there's been a suppression of this issue since all the way back in the 40s and 50s and the Project Blue Book gatekeepers. And for so long, it's been a ridiculed subject. Or if you're not ridiculed, you'll get black suits trying to shut you down and all this sort of stuff. Well, why all of a sudden in 2017 did they bring this stuff out? Well, if you look at their narratives, I think one big tell that there's some sort of UFO psyop in play at the mainstream level is because one narrative that I've heard the New York Times promote, I've heard some of these UFO legacy influencers promote, including Lou Elizondo, Jeremy Corbell, maybe we could call these individuals gatekeepers or whatever, or useful idiots. But that narrative is that these UFOs could be Russia, they could be China, they could even be aliens. But we know for a fact they are not U.S.-made technology. I'm sitting there, that was in a government report, that was in New York Times articles, Elizondo, Jeremy Corbell, a lot of these guys promoting that narrative. How are you so sure it's not U.S.-made? I mean, if they are man-made, I would think that the U.S. would be, the number one nation that would have secret black project craft with exotic propulsion systems. So that makes me question highly right there. And when you also look at the information they're coming out with, they're just talking about the ATIP program that ran from 2008 to 2012 or 14 or whatever, just a few years, few $1 million in this project. All they were doing is just studying photos and videos. Nothing really extravagant. So what I think it is a limited hangout operation. And the idea of a limited hangout is that when the veil of secrecy starts to get shrouded, basically people are asking questions that you don't want them to ask, you volunteer up a little bit of truth to placate the questioners, in order to get them to stop questioning, get them happy with the little bit of truth you're giving them, and then you can keep the rest of the stuff more secret, and they won't inquire any further into that deeper, more sensitive stuff you want to keep secret. So I think it's quite possible we're seeing just a limited hangout op where they're offering up a drop in the bucket, this little ATIP program, couple of black and white videos. All we're doing is studying sightings, when really the defense contractors, in my opinion, have probably already developed some saucers or black triangles that utilize electrogravitic technology. They probably got a couple. They probably invested tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars into these black projects, which is why the Pentagon has all this missing money they can't account for. And defense contractors upcharging, $10,000 for hammers and $40,000 for toilet seats. Where's that extra money go? So at the mainstream UFO level, I think we're seeing just a pitiful limited hangout psyop. And you probably have a couple of these influencers being paraded around the media. A couple of them probably have disinformation they were given. You probably also have a lot of useful idiots. Like I would say David Grush is in this category. David Grush seems like a genuine dude, but he's probably got people in his ear giving him intel that he's believing and he's trusting, and he's, so I think we're seeing a lot of useful idiots. And then on the other side of that spectrum, you've got mainstream media psyops going on over here. And then, as we've been discussing for the first part of this show, you've got the crazy conspiracist, 20 and back, everybody's an insider, everybody on the internet's channeling these days. You know, if you need a job, just call yourself a secret space program whistleblower and Guy will hire you for a show. So I'm kind of like right in the middle. I think these 20 and back whistleblowers, I'm a super soldier, secret space program guy. I think a lot of them are full of crap, but I'm also not believing the mainstream stuff. And I think the truth's kind of in the middle, deeper than what the mainstream's admitting, not as extravagant or as sensationalist as what you're seeing on social media. So that's kind of my opinion on what's happening with the UFO spectrum. And it's tough because at the end of the day, there's so many people that don't have the full picture. You just kind of have to, and there's so many questionable people out there, whether it's just grifters or opportunists at best, or maybe 3-letter agency disinformation assets at worst. There's a lot of those out there. So you just can't assume that everybody has 100% of the truth, whoever it is, whether it's Elizondo or Greer or whoever your favorite UFO podcaster is, right? You just kind of have to scrub all their information and see, I don't even want to say see what resonates, because I don't like that, that understanding. People, I'm going to go with my gut feeling and see what resonates, but what resonates with you might not be the truth, right? So anyway, you just kind of have to see what corroborates, I guess we could say. And there's so many rumors as well, too. And people are taking rumors as evidence. Not the best, right? You can't just, even in a legal courtroom, you can't just enter rumor. You have to have things corroborated. You have to have a preponderance of evidence. And people are taking certain influencers on the internet as well, and they're just blindly believing them hook, line, and sinker, which is very dangerous. So, yeah, it's the UFO subject of all of them is one of the most difficult to investigate because there's so many contradicting narratives and all that. And at the end of the day, we just kind of have to sit in this space of, I can have an idea of what's going on, but I'm not going to know the truth. There's some things we might never know the truth about, right? And our egos don't like that. Our egos like to think we know exactly what's going on so we can have a secure sense of reality, like I know for a fact it's going on. At the end of the day, there's some things we might never know. And some things are going to require a lot more investigation than just believing these gatekeepers or these authorities, whether they're on the mainstream media or on social media, self-proclaimed authorities or experts on the narrative. They might not know either. They think they know the whole picture because they like to think of themselves as experts, but there could be a lot of pieces of the picture they're missing. So it's very tough, this whole UFO issue. But I do think there's a lot of people, like you said earlier, a lot of witnesses that have come forward, experiencers. So you just kind of have to, take in this information and then just hold it in the back of your mind, but just be confident about what you are confident in believing. And then just see what kind of comes to the surface as you continuously go through old government documents or listen to these experiencers or witnesses or research these patents, all these sorts of things. I guess that kind of finishes up my rant.
What about what's happening
subject.
now with the mass drone sightings? There's two things that are pretty disturbing, and they're along the same lines, really. If our military and government truly has no idea what any of this is, that's disturbing enough. But on the other hand, if they do and they're not telling us for some reason, that is equally as disturbing to me. And it's on par either way. I could see either one being true just because of what I've learned about the nature of our ruling class, the nature of our government and systems. What are your thoughts about what is unfolding right now as we're speaking with the sightings?
Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot of theories going around out there. Some of them less plausible, in my opinion. Some of them more plausible. I don't think these are aliens.
Right.
When you look at the legitimate videos, keyword, the legit videos of these craft in the sky, they clearly have flashing lights, external aviation lights, and things like that. So, no, I don't think these are Galactic Federation ships or or reptile aliens or whatever you want to call them. It also goes to note that while I do believe some of the initial reports, initial videos that surfaced at first weeks ago, I think those were legitimate sightings of unknown craft. But in the weeks that have followed, especially over the last 3 or 4 days, there are so many people kind of in a knee-jerk reaction, almost paranoid state, and they are misconstruing planes for UFOs, helicopters for UFOs. There's old videos getting resurfaced as if they're new. There's CGI AI videos going viral on the internet. So there's a lot of fake or misconstrued sightings, just adding to the hysteria. There's a lot of hysteria around this. So it's adding to the confusion. And also, I think it's quite possible that it might not just be one group, but you could have had some group test or conduct operations with these drones or craft in the sky at first, and then you have another group see that happen and see the confusion start to ensue, and then they used that mass confusion to their own advantage and then start testing their own platforms. And you have another group, maybe somewhere else, starting to test their own because the confusion kind of gives them cover to do that. So you could have multiple groups, multiple things in the sky with different agendas from different programs. All right. I highly doubt the Pentagon doesn't know what's going on. They've come out with their, CYA statements. Oh, we don't know what it is. It's not a foreign entity, but we don't know what it is. Okay. I do find it curious that they are not pinning it on a foreign entity. Yeah. So, if it was the deep state or some shadowy intelligence group, what they would probably try to do is pin it on a foreign adversary, because we know the New World Order wants to foment war. They love their war. They love dropping bombs and making money from it. Find it curious that they're not trying to pin it on a foreign entity. But Pentagon also says, nothing to see here, it's not ours. One of those maybe plausible theories I've seen going around is that these could be covert programs that are sniffing ports for dirty bombs and EMPs. Something that maybe a foreign government is trying to sneak into this country, or a terrorist, or some deep state splinter cell group. So these could be Pentagon craft, not doing anything evil, but sniffing for potential terroristic threats. And it kind of makes sense. The Pentagon wouldn't want to admit that. But there's always there's counter arguments to each of these hypotheses. So counter arguments to that, okay, well, why are these drones only being seen over New Jersey then? Why aren't we seeing them over other ports? But we just did get some reports last night that there's drones being seen over LA. Okay, maybe they're expanding their operations. Or maybe what's going on in New Jersey is the misdirection. And the more important operations are happening over other ports or over the border or other areas. And what's happening in New Jersey is just sort of a misdirection. Get everybody focused there while things are happening elsewhere. So I don't know. I'm just kind of going on the threads of that theory, seeing if it makes sense or not. Or at the end of the day, there could be no real tactical operations going on. The whole thing could be a psyop for whether to push surveillance legislation. Oh, look at all these drones that we don't know about. We need more surveillance. Maybe the establishment is going to try to capitalize on the fear. I don't think it's the whole Bluebeam thing. Me personally, I'm not much of a Project Bluebeam guy. I think that whole narrative is dubious in the first place. I don't think we have any evidence to show Project Bluebeam was actually a NASA military project they ever wanted to do. I kind of think the whole Bluebeam narrative that's been online for like 20, 30 years is a lot more sort of clickbait fear porn than anything. Plus, when you look into like the original claims of what Project Bluebeam actually is, it starts with the whole Project Bluebeam narrative starts with manufactured earthquakes and archaeological discoveries from those manufactured earthquakes, which we haven't had any of. And yeah, the whole Bluebeam thing doesn't make sense to me when I dig into it. And I don't think this is Project Bluebeam or fake alien invasion. I think that's just convenient clickbait for internet influencers and convenient fear porn. But at the end of the day, I think the most plausible scenarios to me at this point, it could change, of course, are covert operations, sniffing for dirty bombs and EMPs, or the whole thing's a freaking psyop to push some sort of drone legislation or surveillance legislation. But I'm not, at this point, I'm not concerned about it blowing up into anything devastating, if you will, I guess. I'm just kind of sitting and seeing how the reactions take place. Maybe, and again, anytime the establishment conducts an operation, there's always multiple agendas at play. COVID is a great example. The multiple agendas were, destroy the lower and middle class, siphon money to the upper class, lock everybody down, push mandatory vaccines, censor on the internet. So anytime the establishment does something, there's usually multiple agendas at play. And in this case, maybe there's sort of multiple agendas at play by whatever these drones or skycraft are. Testing the waters, just gauging public reaction. That could be one of the agendas, if not the main agenda, is just to test the waters of public reaction so they can then work their future operations in a more strategic manner, right? Something like that. Maybe part of it could be sniffing for dirty bombs. I've also seen it suggested, and maybe a few of these unidentified drones could fit into this category, but there's some corporations like one called Tero Dynamics, P-T-E-R-O, Tero Dynamics. There's another company, Pivotal Arrow, and these two companies have recently signed contracts with the military to test VTOL craft, vertical takeoff and landing craft, that are like manned quadcopters that, So maybe some of these drone sightings could be just testing of basically manned drones, manned quadcopters. But again, these sightings could be a few different things. So maybe some of them are testing of vertical takeoff and landing craft. Maybe some of them are actually foreign spy drones, just taking advantage of the mass confusion. Oh, perfect timing for us to send our craft up and get some intel or something like that. And then some of these could be sniffing operations. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing's just a mess right now. And it's extra difficult because, of course, government or law enforcement doesn't want to say anything. We know these agencies sometimes have a difficult time sharing information with each other. And then low-level law enforcement and low-level politicians, they're not going to be read in onto any secret programs. So they're just as confused as we are, and they're trying to investigate it. They're not getting answers.
I agree. I think that it's probably not aliens or something non-human, but I do find it interesting that it coincides the recent congressional hearings and the reemergence of interest in UFOs. You mentioned the Grush character who claims that there are bodies in possession. If there's an operation to attempt to get the masses to believe in aliens, to believe in a threat from outside, this would be probably the way they do it. And if this is an ongoing operation that has been in effect for a very long time, I wonder what links have they already gone to. I've had guests on, researchers, that have posed the possibility that maybe our military has been involved with the UFO phenomena all the way up to abducting people, mind control experiments, using drugs to get the victim to believe that they were abducted by aliens when in reality it was a military operation. We'll fast forward to our secret space super soldiers that we hear about today. I agree with you. I think most of them are attention-seeking, crazed weirdos, but some of them truly are traumatized by their experiences. Some of them really believe their experiences. And there are some that postulate that these may be victims of some kind of program that is either implanting false memories, drugging people forcing some sort of out-of-body experience, but in a controlled state, to make them believe that they are on another planet fighting aliens. But it's all to really perpetuate a UFO narrative and cause confusion within the community. Now, I don't know about any of this. This is just information that's come through the show that I find pretty interesting, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, one curious aspect about these drones is that many of the videos we're seeing online that look legitimate, they don't seem to be using any exotic propulsion systems. We're seeing the standard sort of archaic aeroplane propulsion in that they're either using wings or propellers. They're using Bernoulli's principle. And then again, a lot of these have like FAA regulation external aircraft lights. So while I do think that defense contractors in the military industrial complex have electrogravitic levitating saucers at their disposal, how many and how much they've developed those is in question, but I do think they've got at least a couple of their own sort of man-made UFOs. But these drones in the skies don't seem to be that kind. Like secret craft maybe, but craft that still use wings and propellers. So that's what's interesting to me. Although I will say there was a sighting on the West Coast earlier this week, and there's some viral audio going around of recordings from air traffic control. This was in Oregon, between Eugene, Oregon, and the coast. There were 4 unidentified things in the sky being seen going back and forth between the ocean and Eugene, Oregon, and it was seen by a couple different aircraft. And there's recordings on the internet of the audio radio transmissions between air traffic control and some of these pilots. That one's interesting. And frankly, with how these pilots are describing the craft moving in corkscrew motions and going very fast between Eugene, Corvallis, and the ocean, that one I don't think that one's propeller. Granted, it could still be a man-made craft, might not be a man-made craft, but that one they could be using, that could be like an exotic propulsion electrogravitic platform. But at least what we're seeing in New Jersey seems to be old school propellers, wings, Bernoulli's principle. In terms of all of the narratives we're getting on the internet regarding the UFO phenomena, whether like you said, you know, abductions from aliens, or are they abductions from humans that are posing as aliens just to feed the stories out there and blah, blah, blah. You know, this subject dealing with suppressed technologies, whether it's zero-point energy technology, electrogravitic propulsion, our place in the cosmos and intelligent life out there, and then what's the agenda of the intelligent life out in the cosmos? Negative, positive, malevolent, benevolent. I think there's different groups with different agendas. So when I hear people on both sides of the spectrum, you've got some out there like Greer saying, oh, all the alien life in the cosmos is good and positive. Evil is only on Earth. I question that. But I also question the people that say all aliens are demons. Everything out there in the cosmos is demonic. Earth is the only place with positive, happy, good, benevolent people on it. Seems real weird to me as well. And it's typically the fundamentalist religious attitude that has that. And I just think to myself, man, God must be a dick if he made all the life in the whole universe demonic and we're the only ones here that aren't. So I don't resonate with either of those. I think there are civilizations out there in the cosmos, some probably much more advanced than us, with a variety of different agendas. Some probably don't give a shit about what's going on this planet. Some probably want this to be a slave planet. Some probably want this to, want us to get our crap together and become a, much more happy, awake and aware species that can actually go out into space and work with different civilizations. So Yeah, but in terms of this issue, I mean, with how sensitive it is, suppressed technologies that could effectively liberate us from these slave systems, and also just the understanding of our place in the cosmos would destroy so many control systems like fundamentalist. I want to be specific here because I'm not against religion by any means. I think they are helpful tools for many people, but I do also think that the upper echelon of these religions has been infiltrated, has corrupted these religions. People at the upper echelons of some of these religions that have corrupted them and then used them for control. So I say establishment or the organized mainstream religions. If we understood our place here in the cosmos, these organized religions would crumble. They'd have much less control. Also, mainstream science would be exposed of how propagandized it is, and the whole global full spectrum dominance control system would crumble. So the whole UFO subject and all the sub-threads, so many different sub-threads that it contains, it's probably the most sensitive subject to the powers that be, and the one subject that they have invested the most in keeping hidden, classified, and secret, going back decades, centuries even, probably. So it would reason to suggest, and we mentioned earlier, so many people are moving away from the mainstream media that they're going to alternative and social media for their news now. So it would make sense that the powers that be, the people that watch the mainstream media, that still believe it, they're caught up by it, hook, line, and sinker. The powers that be don't need to invest that much into the mainstream media anymore. They're going to go after the threats. The threats are the people looking for truth on social media and alternative media. So it's completely reasonable to assume that the powers that be, the deep state, they would be sending loads of disinformation assets, loads of psyops into alternative and social media to muddy the waters, to confuse people, to misdirect them, waste their time, lead them astray. And this has probably been going on even before social media, back in the radio broadcast days, back in the mid to late 20th century. They were probably sending disinfo assets into meetup groups and local conspiracy UFO groups around the country, sending their assets in to get intelligence and to keep tabs on these people. So yeah, no, that's why I am very cautious with the whole UFO community, because there's probably a heck of a lot of misinformation that gets repeated by people who just don't realize it's misinformation, like the Galactic Federation Ashtar Command narratives that started 30 years ago just get repeated. Same thing with a lot of these Project Bluebeam narratives that started 30 years ago that just get repeated. And now we've got a lot of new faces coming into the picture, whether it's mainstream UFO legacy gatekeepers or new faces on social media that claim they're in contact with aliens and they're some, emissary to humanity, or they claim to be super soldiers and secret space program whistleblowers. So there's just so much. The waters are so muddy. But we do need to be careful, because we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because we have one dude claiming he was a secret space super soldier or whistleblower. Just because he's fake doesn't mean that everyone is fake, right? Or just because we have one dude being paraded around CNN who's clearly a government disinfo asset, just because he's saying some fake stuff about UFOs doesn't mean the whole subject's fake, right? So it's a very nuanced conversation, very nuanced subject that you have to be very, very careful in digging into.
Where are you at with the true nature of this phenomena? Although I know that it could probably never be really understood, especially with where we're at right now. But my understanding has shifted. It continues to change with new understandings and information. But I was very much at one point a very nuts and bolts. These are physical beings coming and interacting with us. And now I'm not so sure. I am leaning towards more of a metaphysical consciousness phenomena, because I've had experiences myself where it seems as some intelligence took over my complete perception and changed what I was seeing and changed what I was able to perceive for an amount of time. Now, what that tells me is if there is any intelligence that can do that, they can change a person's perception in a way to make them believe maybe they're on a craft. Maybe they are in a situation dealing with beings, but in reality, they could be just in their bed and having this experience purely through their consciousness. And that doesn't negate the experience. That doesn't make it not real. But it does change the phenomena if indeed it may be some sort of metaphysical intelligence. Based on my own experiences and many that I have interviewed that have this understanding, there's an emerging understanding or belief that this may be more of a consciousness phenomena than a physical one.
So, just purely my opinion, I can be quite confident in my opinions, but I can also change them as well. I think 90% of the legitimate UFOs we see in the skies are man-made craft. But I do think there's a select few that are not. In terms of the makeup of life from outside our planet, what is extraterrestrial life like? There's this argument that goes back and forth. Well, they're physical. No, they're not physical. They're all interdimensional. No, they're not. Why not both? Again, another sort of nuanced conversation, but why not both? If you look at us as humans, we are both. We've got these physical meat suit bodies, but we also have a metaphysical or interdimensional. I don't really like that term, but right. I use it for buzzword's sake. We are both physical and non-physical. We are interdimensional beings. We have meat suit, and then we have this consciousness that, we go to sleep, we dream at night, we have these astral projections in the dream state. When we're waking and conscious, we, if you want to experiment with some mushrooms or DMT, then you really go into the astral state. We are both. We are interdimensional. So why wouldn't life out there in the cosmos? I'm just kind of like a logically deductive person where I am kind of nuts and bolts and left brain, but at the same time, I'm also right brain, and I try to also see things from a sort of higher conscious, energetic perspective, if you will. So to me, life out there in the cosmos, it probably takes both and or one of the other forms. So if you have all life, even plant life, has an energetic component along with its physical nature, right? It's just the energetic, the conscious component. It all depends on, I guess, how evolved that being is. So plant life and animal life, they don't have the self-awareness component that we do. Our consciousness is a little more evolved, but our consciousness is not that evolved because we still have a very difficult time working in that astral plane, making that conscious, understanding it. Like, we know very little about our own consciousness. I would imagine advanced beings out there in the cosmos are sort of that next level in conscious evolution. They're more understanding of how to work in that metaphysical plane with their consciousness in projecting it and all of that. So I still think there are physical extraterrestrials out there, but there's probably also non-physical ones as well. And what does that non-physical even mean? Like, we can only see a fraction of a percent of the electromagnetic spectrum. There's so much that we just can't see as humans, so much we can perceive from this space-time, time-space, ether around us. So when I think of extraterrestrial intelligence, I think it's both physical and non-physical. And there's probably non-physical entities constantly influencing us for both good and bad. Call them angels or demons if you want to, if that's, the semantics you prefer. But yeah, no doubt, I do think that non-physical extraterrestrial influence exists. I think there's also some physical ones out there as well that we could probably shake hands with. But I also think, and this concept was exemplified in Star Trek with their Prime Directive, Stargate SG-1 in I love that TV show. But in some of those shows as well, in that there's this karma, there's this free will component that these extraterrestrial civilizations take very seriously. So they just can't come down and land on the White House lawn and show themselves, nor can they come down and outright enslave us and put us in chains, because they would be, they would get karmic ties with this civilization, and that's something to be avoided. So I think the malevolent or demonic ETs, physical or non-physical or whatever, they have to enslave us in a way where we don't realize we're enslaved. And they've probably been doing that for thousands of years. Elohim, fallen angels, if you will. Then you have the benevolent, angelic aliens, entities, what have you. And they're trying to help us, but still from behind the scenes. Where, in a way that's like a parent almost. Like you can't do it for the kid his whole life. They have to learn how to tie their shoes on their own and everything. So as a civilization on planet Earth, we have to learn how to tie our own shoes and evolve on our own. So I do think there's been influence on this planet for thousands of years from non-celestial groups of all agendas, of all different agendas that come in both physical and non-physical forms. Just, I guess, depends on the group.
I'd like to think that's what's happening now. We're being forced to learn how to tie our own shoes right now just because of the dark polarities that we're being presented. We can either keep perpetuating this shitty system that we're in right now, or we can learn to be self-reliant and check out of all the bullshit that keeps humanity enslaved and under this same thumb. So I think it's a very special time we're going through right now. I think we're evolving in many different ways. For the last few minutes we have, what would you tell folks that are just starting to look into this stuff, just becoming curious about the nature of our reality, but are surrounded by all the nonsense that we talked about earlier? How would you say that they should sift through this information right now?
Yeah, I would say a very powerful thing to do is learn a few things. Number one, just learn propaganda techniques, especially propaganda techniques the mainstream media uses. A lot of those are used in social media as well. And honestly, a lot of these propaganda techniques were kind of founded by like Joseph Goebbels and the Nazis, and then they just kind of came over here and started using them in this country. But different propaganda techniques like echo chamber effect, like, anonymous sourced crap. There's so much anonymously sourced crap from the mainstream media and on social media. And learning about logical fallacies as well, being able to identify logical fallacies in arguments, and also studying neuro-linguistic programming. So just studying these things, being able to identify psyops and identify word crafting and manipulation from carefully crafted wording, spelling, that's very important. And that's just a very, very potent way of being able to hone your own discernment and sift through information on the internet. And then sometimes it just takes time. It takes time and experience. I had to go through a lot of my own experiences. There was a lot of crap that I believed 12 years ago that I had to wake up to and change my mind about, and just understand that taking the red pill is not a one and done process. It's not like, oh, I don't watch the mainstream media anymore, so I'm awake. No, it's a constant, every day you have to put on your discernment cap. You have to take that red pill. It's a lifelong process of continuing the self-education and honing your discernment. And also, I'll finish with this, is being able to control your emotions. Because it's through sensationalism, it's through emotional manipulation is the easiest way the mainstream media and these influencers on social media will manipulate you, is because when we're in that emotional knee-jerk reactive state, or when we're listening to people and they're telling you what to think and how to feel about something. I hear this all the time, especially from internet influencers. You're going to be so upset by this, or this is going to be exciting news, or this is what I'm about to tell you is going to make you feel this way. When I big red flag to me. when personalities do that. They're telling you how to think and feel about something. So just notice these things. Notice the neuro-linguistic programming. Be very observant. Be very careful with your emotions. Don't get so emotionally invested in random ass people on the internet you've never met before. Right? And be able to separate intentions from information. So you could have influencers on the internet that have the best heart, the best integrity, super well-meaning. They're just not very well studied on something. So they're great people, but I can't really trust their information because they don't know it all that well. So, trust needs context. Trust is a very nuanced thing. I can trust CNN is going to lie their faces off to me. I can trust somebody's intention without trusting their information. That doesn't mean I think they're a bad person. They just might not be very well read on this subject. At the same time, I can trust somebody's information, but I don't trust their heart. I think they're trying to manipulate me in some way. But I'm still going to pay attention to them because they can have some good information nuggets in their stuff here and there, right? I think there's a lot of people like that in the UFO movement. I don't really trust their integrity, but they got a lot of good information. So I'll still listen to them. I'll still follow them. I just won't promote them. And I won't, I'll just be very careful about where they might be trying to manipulate me in their narratives. So all these sorts of things, all these different discernment honing techniques and being very careful with your emotions. That's what I would suggest to people sort of just getting into researching the real world.
Right on. Great suggestions. Jordan, thank you so much. This was great information. Before I let you go, let the audience know if they'd like to find out more about you. What's the best way to do so?
Thank you, sir. JordanSather.com is my website, and you can find links to all my different platforms on there. I've been censored a lot over the years, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of them. Can't count. But thankfully, Elon let me back on Twitter. So that's probably my main platform at the moment for social media is Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, @Jordan_Sather_. For videos, my main platform there is Rumble, since YouTube no like me anymore. So @JordanSather on Rumble. But again, you can go to my website, jordansather.com, and find links to wherever I'm at or not at these days.
Excellent. Jordan, thank you again. Love to talk again in the future. Much more we can discuss. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.